Oh, hi folks. I just wanted to go through a little bit of a CAD technique stuff about introducing you to working with surfaces. Let me show you something as a starting point. There's a lot more you can do with it, but this gives you a lot of opportunities for making even cooler stuff than you thought you could. Here's my simple CAD part. This is just a small rectangular prism, and instead of working with this as a solid, the solid is really a concept where it's something is bounded by surfaces. And we can work with surfaces directly. If you go up to the Insert tool menu um, and you scroll down here to Surface, you can also work in Features. But right now I want to show you that you can work in surfaces directly, which means you can manipulate the surface of this simple rectangle. So if I go and there's a lot of tools I can play around with, I'm actually going to go to this one, which is the freeform one. It starts out asking me for a face. I'm going to pick that face. And the first thing is I'm going to pick this button to add a curve. I'm going to add a curve in that direction. And if I go escape, so I've added this curve. If I just highlight the curve, you'll see that there's these arrows that show up. And they actually allow me to manipulate the surface however I like. Now, if I move one end of it down, it looks kind of weird, but after it rebuilds the part, you'll see that that actually is something it will do. I could also add a few more curves. Say, for instance, if I go and you can see that the green line here is showing me curves in the long axis, I could flip the direction, and this will allow me to add some curves to the short axis. And if I get out of the Add Curve tool, and again, if I highlight this one, then I can make this part asymmetrical in some kind of wonky way. And then when I finish that and see what I've got this weird wave shape surface of that part. And it's made with just a very few control curves, something that's quite cool. Now, obviously, you can really get yourself messed up with this, but this gives you the ability to make a lot more than just regular rectangular things. So I'm just going to leave you with that for a second. Now, there's other things we can do as well. So we don't just have to work with manipulating surfaces that are already in solids. We can actually use surfaces to create use curves to create new surfaces. So I'm going to use the loft tool, for instance, here to create a whole new surface. Now, in order to do that, I need to have some curves initially to guide those surfaces. The way I showed you with freeform was kind of freeform, but we can do this in a much more regulated way. So, for instance, let's say we've got this this rectangular block, and I'm going to create a new plane, and you'll see it wants me to pick some reference points for the plane. I'm going to pick the end there of that plane. I'm going to say that that's parallel. The second reference, I want to pick the midpoint of this side. I should be able to pick that edge. Should be able to pick not the edge. I want the midpoint. How would I try that plane? No, doesn't like that either. Sometimes I find the surface, the plane selection thing to be a little frustrating. Um, oh well, I'll do it the easy way, and I'll just manually put it halfway because I know I made it 120 long. There. So I've got this new plane. Now, if on this plane I create a new sketch, and this sketch is going to be a half circle. Boom, boom. I'm going to make it like that. Now I can select these points and the relationships between things. And if I use Control to select that line, I'm going to pick pierce. So I've glued that point onto the edge where it pierces this plane. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side. And I'm going to Control select that and select pierce like so. And now I have this half circle arc that I can adjust the height of. And I'm going to throw in a dimension there. I'm going to pick a dimension from here to that point. And let's say I'm going to make that 10. So that's not that exciting. But now if I go to my surface tool, I can insert surface. I'm going to try a lofted surface. And it wants to see the profiles. I'm going to pick that profile and that one, and I'll pick this one. I think the order matters. And this should give me something interesting. Nope, didn't like it because I have to flip the edge. There we go. The order in which you select the edges is a pain in the butt. And if I go, and I should be able to pick, no, it doesn't like me using that one as well. So I can create that lofted surface, which is all fine and dandy, but it isn't exactly like I want. Like I can go to some extra efforts to try and set the tangent conditions of the surface at the end. And that's kind of awkward. But if I go back to the sketch, and if I basically do the same thing, I create a new plane. Features, reference geometry, plane. I'm going to pick this. I guess I'll pick it there. And I want this to be the opposite direction, so that way, but not 60. I want it to be 30. Now I have this new plane on which I will also draw another curve. And I'll look at constraints again here. I'll pick that, pierce, same as I did before, that, and Control pierce. And then I'm going to pick my midpoint and that curve, and I want the pierce point there. So now all I've done is I've got two intersecting curves, and if I go to my insert surface and I go back to my lofted surface, I can pick profiles, this one, and this one, and picking them in order. And then my guide curve, if I pick this one as my guide curve, that works out. Although what you'll see is that there's some weird conditions at the edges. It's hard to see sometimes, but close up, the curvature of the edges won't necessarily be right, but I can still pick as a guide curve that straight edge. And you can see even here, that edge is acted, it's got some wobbles in it. So for a guide curve is that straight, and that works out. So now I've got a bit more regular surface than what I had before. The thing is, you'll see that it's not a solid. So for instance, if I go and I hide that, what I've created is genuinely just a balloon surface. So I can extrude to fill that, and there's a few ways to do it. The easiest way is to insert boss base. You can extrude, and you can pick a plane, which would be maybe I guess it would be that plane. And if I convert these edges, so I've got a rectangle, and if I just simply extrude that, I can extrude up to surface, and I'll pick that surface. And now what you'll find is that that extrusion should have extruded all the way up to the surface, and that would be a solid. So if I look at a cross section through here, you can see that it's genuinely a solid all the way through. If I hadn't done that, if I just delete that extrusion and I show the solid, this was what I started with, and I look at the same cross section, you can see that that the surface at the top isn't a solid. So it's showing it as being kind of a hollow shell, like it is. So working with surfaces, you can do a lot of really interesting things. You can get yourself in big trouble by making it too complicated, but if you go back to the basics of sketches and orienting the geometry so that it starts to make sense, you can do a lot of interesting and creative shaped things using these surface tools. The thing is, when you've made a surface, you have to recognize that it's different than a solid. And so sometimes you'll have to convert the surface to, or fill a solid to a surface, or convert the surface in one way or another to a solid. It gives you a whole bunch of new tools to play with, and a lot more power, especially if you're making unusual shapes. So that's it for this short video. I hope that helps, especially those of you who are making things like guitars and various things where you want to get away from just starting with a box or just designing a box. You can create much more organic shapes. You can also get yourself really messed up, so be careful. Thanks for watching.